Oh, I was very shocked and very taken aback because I'd been asked along in the afternoon. I had actually stood in a few times for Gloria Hunniford on her afternoon show that she did, but this time she was on it and she asked me along as a guest because she said she had Donny Osmond and I think somebody else, whose name I can't remember now, and it sounded a bit odd, I thought, but they had always wanted to be quizmasters, so they were going to have a little game when they set them up as quizmasters. I thought it was a bit odd that they hadn't sort of made a little stage set. We were just literally sitting on the sofa, and I thought it was all a bit amateurish, to be quite honest. But they put bandages around our eyes, and they gave us various objects to see if we could guess what they were. And Donny and the other person was sort of being the quiz master. And then suddenly I was given a book, and I was feeling this book. And I have absolutely no idea why I said this. It could have been any book. It could have been a beautiful art book or anything. But I just said, oh, it feels like a This Is Your Life book. And Gloria gasped. And I took my thing off, my eye bandage off, and I said, oh, how lovely. Kind of meaning really, gosh, I got the answer right, how extraordinary. Suddenly turned, because I was aware somebody was over my left shoulder, and there was Michael. And he said, Valerie, this is your life. And I was absolutely horrified. And I remember saying rather rudely, Michael, I said, you bugger. Of course, they took that out when he went out later in the day. And my second remark was, oh my gosh, what am I going to wear? And I was caught. Well, they don't let you out of their sight because you could, vamoose off to the south of France and not be there. So somebody was designated to take me home. And all the way I was saying to this poor girl, I don't know what I'm going to wear. I haven't got anything to wear. And still feeling rather shocked about it and wondering how many people knew. And arrived home and fortunately, as I looked at my wardrobe, found something. I thought, oh, I can wear that. And we then set off for Teddington because the programme was going to be at Teddington. And when we got to the gates of Teddington, there was the security man, and obviously some guests were arriving, and we were told, no, we couldn't enter yet, so we had to sort of sit in a side road waiting. And then when you're taken into the studio, you're taken into a room right at the very end of the corridor. As far as I remember, the windows were barred. And everybody comes to you. You can't go to the canteen. They bring you supper. And the makeup girl comes to you. You don't go to the makeup room. Everything comes to you. And if you've got an outfit that you want being pressed, then the wardrobe lady comes and takes it from you. You're really, really segregated. And at this point, beginning to get a bit panicky. Thinking, oh my gosh. And then I decided really that I'd been caught and I just had to go along with it. When the moment came and Michael, they played that little bit and Michael then brought me onto the stage, there were a few people sitting there, but one side was absolutely nobody at all. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, they couldn't get anybody to come. And I very nearly said to Michael, oh, couldn't anyone come? I mean, completely forgetting, of course, everybody was backstage waiting to come on. Fortunately, I didn't say anything, and then it began to progress, and it was great fun, and it was a surprise because there were people you didn't think, you would come along, and there were quite a few people that perhaps you might like to have come along who weren't there. I had always said over the years to my agent, I do not want to be on This Is Your Life. If they ever approach you, say no, she doesn't want to do it. And it had crossed my mind at one point that just in case I ever did it, it might have been nice to make a list of the people that one would like to have as guests, which I never actually did. I never got round to that. But at the time I was living with someone called Mark, and obviously they approached Mark to see whom I knew, and they approached my father, and they approached my brother, and they approached my agent. But inevitably there were people that they didn't know about in my life. Mark was actually very good because I'd had a letter not long before from a friend I'd rather lost touch with, I'd tried to make contact with, and she'd written to tell me that her son was very, very ill. He was about 20 and he'd got bone cancer. And I remember showing Mark and saying, oh, isn't this terrible? I mean, it's awful. I'm just, devastated by this. And I just tucked the letter away somewhere. Anyway, he'd obviously found the letter and he asked that friend. And I suddenly looked up in the audience. She was sitting there and I thought that was so lovely. And I remember doing a special little, and waving at her. Sadly, she didn't stay very long afterwards for the party. She obviously needed to get back. But that was a nice thought that but you can't have everybody in your life on, heavens above, I suppose at one point during the programme, and a lot of the younger, newer Blue Peter presenters came on, which was fun, because there's always been, until very recently, a contact. I don't go back anymore to do it, as I think quite a long time one did. So they came along, that was nice. But I suppose I was beginning to think who could be the person, who would be the surprise guest. And in fact, they brought in Joseph from the Starehe School, who'd been about 12 or 13 when I'd gone there to film with Princess Anne and had shown us around the school. And he was lovely, and everybody liked him. Everybody talked to him after the programme, and I think he had a fantastic time. And by now, he was, in fact, the headmaster of the school. So he was, I suppose, in his early 40s. Michael was wonderfully quick-witted. I remember my dad telling a story about, he's got some lovely black and white photos of me as about 2-year-old, 3-year-old, with one of those very old-fashioned phones that you take off the hook and hold in. And apparently I used to phone up, story that Dad told on This Is Your Life, I used to phone up the local exchange. I didn't know I was talking to the local exchange, and I'd say, I want to speak to Mr. Hitler, please. And the local exchange lady would say, just a minute, I'll try and get him, and then would bring somebody else, a bloke from the exchange, who'd say, hello, Mr. Hitler here. And I would tell Mr. Hitler what I thought. And Michael sort of muttered under his breath, I'm amazed we didn't manage to bring the war to an end. Kind of implying, I think, that I was fairly bossy. So it was quite sweet. He was very quick, Michael. No, there were some really nice guests. It was a very nice evening, and the party afterwards was lovely. Quite a few people who were around doing other programmes popped in and said hello and congratulations. It was a special night. It was great fun. Once I got over the shock, and once I was happy about the fact that I did have something to wear that would look nice, I decided to enjoy it. And once I realised that it wasn't a question of the fact that they couldn't get anybody to come along, but they were, in fact, all behind the scenes waiting to come on, it was lovely. The only thing I regret is the fact that in the book, as I said, every shot is of the back of my head greeting somebody. So